Welcome, everybody. It's great to have you here for another Making Sense Project webinar. Glad that you could join us. Our agenda for this evening is to talk about the Making Sense Project, provide a little bit of background, and then dive into our 6 and 60, where we'll do 6 resources in under 60 minutes. This time our theme is children's books and games with financial themes. We'll share some upcoming webinars and additional opportunities and round out the evening with the evaluation and Act 48 information. My name is Hilary Hunt. I serve as the project director for the Making Sense Project, and it's my pleasure to guide you through this evening's webinar. The Making Sense Project is a partnership between the Pennsylvania Department of Education and Penn State University, and is part of an overall program focused on financial literacy and economic education initiatives. I'd like to thank our project partners, Sally Flaherty, as well as Dr. Kathy Bowen, who's joining us on the line from Penn State this evening. Our webinars and really our program overall is designed to enhance content knowledge about specific components of personal finance and/or economics, highlight financial literacy resources, and share professional information. And this evening, really, we're going to focus primarily on the highlighting of financial literacy resources, as well as some professional information as we go through the resources we're sharing tonight. The theme this evening is, again, a 6 and 60 format, where we're going to do 6 resources, 60 minutes. And on this one, we are focused on children's books and games with a financial literacy or personal finance theme. So I'm excited to kick this off. I want to share with you the resources that we're going to be talking through. So we have the 6 resources that you see here, everything from resources from government or quasi-governmental agencies such as the Federal Reserve and also the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. We have the Council on Economic Education out of New York, which is a large nonprofit organization focused on economic and financial literacy. We have things from the Utah Department of Education, so the other side of the country, who's done a great job in providing or going through and providing financial literacy materials at different grade levels. And then finally, Visa's Practical Money Skills for Life. So those are the 6 sources of our resources today. And hopefully I haven't been too overly optimistic, managed to get through these in the afternoon. But in addition to these 6, or while we're doing these 6, I'm also going to highlight 5 books. So in addition to those 6 sources, I'm going to share with you 5 books that I love for financial literacy topics. And so we're going to weave these in. These, by the way, will be a package of these books will be sent to one of our participants at the end. So we're going to draw a name at random and let that person know that they are going to receive a set of these books that you can use in your classroom and or provide to another educator of your choice. And some of these are some of my favorites. So before we dive into the resources, I just wanted to talk about some different uses. So I know some of you teach younger students. We've got folks, it looks like, on the line with us anywhere from pre-K up through high school. So I wanted to address how a variety of educators that are on the line with us or might be watching this in a recorded fashion might be able to use this information. So if you have younger students, I think the applications are probably a little more obvious. You can certainly do interactive read-alouds with any of these materials. Many of them come with lessons or activities that you can do with your students, and quite a few of them have parent resources, and we're going to be talking about those as well, that you can provide to parents as something else that they can do, maybe to augment or share. Maybe you send books home, maybe you'd want to get a few of these and put some of the resources with them to send home and encourage daily reading with between parent and child. We all know the more time a child spends reading at home or out of school, the better prepared they are for their education and for life in general. So lots of different uses there. Again, kind of obvious, I think, for the younger students. Maybe a little less obvious are how you might be able to use some of these resources, which on the surface look like they're really just for elementary level. But older students, high school kids, actually still love to be read to. If you've never tried that with a high school audience, I know they might look at you like you're a little bit crazy, but they 9 times out of 10 they really love it. And so you might think about these as ways to activate a lesson, get students engaged. You might also promote some buddy reading. So say, for example, maybe if some of your students volunteer or would want to work with younger children, or maybe some of them go after school. So, for example, the school district where my children go to school are all on one campus. Some of our older students at the end of the day go to the elementary school and serve as peer tutors or as volunteers in those classrooms in the afternoon and read along with students. Maybe they could take some of these books or do things with them. Perhaps some of you are family consumer science teachers that maybe are doing child development courses, or maybe you even have a child development lab. Maybe you have a pre-K program that your students run or are involved with, or a child care program. You might consider having the students do this with some of the young people or children there. You can also think about some cross-grade or school service projects. Again, with so many school districts in Pennsylvania that are smaller, that are on the same campus. I know it doesn't work very well in large school districts where they're all spread out, but in those cases where you can have high school students go down to the elementary school or what have you, these can provide for some great service projects. And then finally, you might consider some leadership opportunities. For example, schools or high school students, maybe they're looking for a project to do for any host of reasons. Could even be an Eagle Scout project or a Gold Award for Scouts. Lots of different things that you could think about. They might work on getting a program started, maybe with a local library. They might think about raising money to support purchasing some of these books for an elementary school classroom or library. There's lots of different ways that you might be able to think about this. So I just wanted to recommend or have you think about some different ways to use this depending on which grade level that you mention, or that you teach in. So with that said, I'm going to dive into our very first resource. Resource number one is from right here in Pennsylvania. So I decided to sort of start here at home and work our way, it's kind of working our way west, actually. But anyhow, the Federal Reserve Bank of Philadelphia, I know many of you, if you've been on Making Sense Project webinars or programs before, you may be familiar with our colleagues there. Dr. Andrew Hill and Todd Zartman have participated in our webinars as presenters in the past and are just fantastic resources here to us in Pennsylvania. But they have lesson plans that are on the Federal Reserve Bank of Philadelphia's website that really are for use across the country and are used across the country. Now, because the lessons from the Federal Reserve Bank of Philadelphia are targeted really more towards their service region, which is not just Pennsylvania. So they work in Pennsylvania, the eastern 2/3 of Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and Delaware. But they correlate across the country with national standards in their materials. So I wanted to share with you their resources really sort of fall into 4 categories. We're going to talk about 3 of the 4 this evening. I'm going to skip over the publications, although that is an important piece of what they do there. They contribute incredibly to the academic research in the area of financial literacy as well. But I want to focus on these 3 areas for tonight. So in terms of lesson plans, by the way, I don't think I mentioned earlier, these 6 and 60 webinars, our aim or my aim with these, even though it's sort of we whiz through all of this, is to go kind of a mile wide and an inch deep. So really, these are just introductions to all of this. And also to follow up on that, I will have a PDF of this PowerPoint available on the website, hopefully tomorrow. In addition to that PDF, I will be providing you with all the links to all of these sources, and I'll also put up a list of the books that I'm referencing and links to those as well. So if you're wondering what you need to write down, maybe that'll help you out. Also, as anytime that you have a question, feel free to post it either in the chat or in the Q&A. Okay, so let's talk about the Federal Reserve Bank of Philadelphia's lesson plans. So all of their lesson plans are available online as PDFs that you can download. They have 40 of them that are focused on elementary level and have a connection to literature. You can look at them by topic. All of them, one of the things I love about these lessons is it's not, read the story and then do this activity. It is, read to this page, pause, and have this discussion. So it is very much what they refer to, a lot of times now in early childhood education as an interactive read aloud. We're not just going to sit there and read through the book and show all the pictures and at the end of it start having conversations. We're going to pause, we're going to reflect, we're going to ask questions, we're going to get students involved in thinking about, what they're seeing or hearing, what's going on in the story at that time. And so that is very much incorporated into these lessons from the Federal Reserve Bank of Philadelphia. And then they provide hands-on activities that students can do. So these are not, these are all educationally relevant. So they're not, just stand up and talk about this. These are all activities that are going to get kids really, engaged with the material. These are some of my favorite books. I just picked a few of the ones that they have lessons on. This Less Than Zero one, by the way, is great for also introducing negative numbers. It's a math start book. So there's integration here across the curriculum as well. So the lesson that I wanted to pull, or the book I wanted to showcase from the lessons that they have available, is actually Morris Goes to School. So Morris is our cute and lovable little moose. This is written by B. Weissman, and the lesson plan from the Philadelphia Fed for this is targeted at grades 1 through 3. This one, what I love is that it talks about why do we need to go to school? So, you as a first grader, why do you go to school? Do you go to school because your parents make you? They tell you have to get up and go. Why is it that you're here? Why do we why do we make kids go to school? And begins with a skit, and then the book is read aloud, and then there's activities. One of the things that I think is great is that this book ties in incredibly well with things that are already going on in elementary classrooms around careers and community helpers. So you see, for example, one of the examples here is a veterinarian, right? A lot of times we talk about those community helpers and we talk about jobs that people have. Maybe we have, people with different careers come in and talk to the classroom. But, are we making connections between that and the fact that they've gone to school and they're building what we would refer to in economic terms as their human capital? And so we can look at these, and make these connections, which I also think is a great way to connect the personal finance and economics with what schools are now being required under the requirements from the Department of Education right now around career and college readiness. And so the artifacts that schools are required to produce and retain for each student eventually will go down all the way down to kindergarten. And so we want to make sure that students are doing things that are relevant and that they're making connections, not between just, that, people should have jobs, but, people also have jobs because they earn an income from that, right? And that you don't just get to go decide you want to be a veterinarian. You have to go to school and you have to, you have to learn a lot to become a veterinarian. You have to know, what are all the bones in the dog and their organs and all those types of things so that you can help, sick dogs get well, those kinds of things at an elementary level. So this activity is really neat and engaging, and they think about different skills that are required. What do you have to be able to do to be a ballet dancer? You have to have balance, and you'd have to practice a lot, and different things that you'd need to be able to do these different jobs and or learn in order to be able to have these different careers. Then there's this survey. So students go home or talk to another adult and they interview them about what skills they have, and then they talk about what is a skill that they've learned or improved, how did they do that, and why did they do that. So some of these, most people can read and write and multiply and divide, but, I'd be hard pressed to make a foul shot reliably. My painting of pictures is all abstract, and I would probably need to go through a YouTube tutorial a couple of times to do an origami bird, right? So we might find that different people have different skills, and they apply those skills in different ways. And so I think this is great way to showcase how different people have different skills to do the jobs that they have, and or improve their skills in different ways. And so I that's the reason that I chose Morris Goes to School for this highlight. As I mentioned before, our colleagues Andrew Hill and Todd Zartman do a lot of great things at the Philly Fed. Among those is teacher training that they offer. So this is a list of previous professional development, on-site professional development programs that they have offered. The majority of their programs are offered in person at the Federal Reserve Bank of Philadelphia. However, they do on occasion travel out and work with educators across the state. If you don't receive their emails, I would encourage you to reach out and connect with them to make sure that you're getting their information and or check regularly back on their website for their professional development information. They have not released their fall schedule yet. They do have signups right now for some of their week-long programs in Philadelphia for this summer. I did not list them here because they really are meant more for the high school audience, but those, when they're available, are always listed on their website. Last but not least, from the Federal Reserve Bank of Philadelphia, if you or any educators that take students to Philly and do, a field trip, or if you're located in Philadelphia and can take advantage of some of these, just on your own or without having to make a special trip. The Money in Motion exhibit is open Monday through Friday. It's open other days of the week, sometimes to just the general public, but tours are available Monday through Friday at 9:30, 10:30, or 11:30. For groups of 10 or more, they have to be scheduled in advance, and I have a phone number here that you can call. They have lessons that go along with these for various grade levels. And for those of folks that might be coming from out of town, the Mint, the Constitution Center, Liberty Bell, and Independence Hall are all a stone's throw from the Federal Reserve Bank of Philadelphia. So you can certainly pair these with any other trip that you might be doing, and consider throwing this into the mix, perhaps, if you take students to Philadelphia or if you're located there already to begin with. Okay, so this is our homegrown resource. We're gonna take a step a little bit south, not too far though. Resource number 2 comes to us from the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, which is a federal entity located in Washington, D.C. They have an extensive amount of practitioner resources. So on their website up here, where it shows practitioner resources, is where you would locate the resources for educators and parents. Their website is consumerfinance.gov. In one of our previous 6 and 60, I shared with you some of the other resources that are available from CFPB. I'm going to repeat just a little bit of that in case you weren't on that webinar before. But one of the things that they've done is they've taken a look at what they refer to as the building blocks of financial literacy. And so these are 3 building blocks that have been determined to be necessary to reach financial well-being. So the first is executive function, that ability to do things like plan ahead, control impulses, what have you, that are necessary, that might not seem like a financial literacy requirement, but are required to be able to do things that somebody who is financially or has financial literacy would do, or to be able to actually act on that knowledge. So, for example, you might know that it's a good idea to not spend all of your money as soon as you get it. But if you have no impulse control and can't, control those impulses, then it's a little hard to actually do that in practice, right? And then building upon that goes to the notion of financial habits and norms, and then finally financial knowledge and decision making. So you can see these are all those building blocks, and it's not just that the one that you have to have all that executive function before you can move ahead. All of these progressively increase over a child's as a child progresses in age. These resources are, again, on their website. You can find material that's specific to a variety of grade levels. We featured the high school and middle school in our previous webinar, so I wanted to show you what they have for elementary school students. So you see here what has been identified for financial habits and norms, knowledge and decision making, and executive function at the elementary level. So these are things that you want to watch for a student to demonstrate, and then how you can help develop these different skills, right? So this is just a sort of a background information for educators to reference and think about how they are building these skills so that their students can have success in the future. All right, so you might be saying, okay, Hilary, that's all well and good. What does any of this have to do with books? Because we're focused on children's books today. So the CFPB does have a bunch of lesson plans or activities that they've put out. So far, all of those are based on, or for the high school level. I understand that ones for the elementary level are coming out. But for right now, the resources around books are all focused on parents, and they have a great tool called the Money as You Grow. And part of that is the Money as You Grow bookshelf. And so, as for the Money as You Grow, they have things on different money milestones. So, for parents to be able to sort of check the box to try and figure out if their student or their child is doing different things. Look for activities and conversation starters. The Talk About Money Choices is a great resource. So, for example, opportunities to engage your child in conversations around different financial topics. And then at the bottom here, you see Read Together. This is the Money as You Grow bookshelf. So that's really where I want to focus in on this resource here. So these are the books that are part of the Money as You Grow bookshelf. Some of these may be ones that you're familiar with. Quite a few of these are great for the lower grade levels, and some of them are extend a little bit further. You'll notice as well that 2 of these resources are available in Spanish. So, and for example, Tia Isa Wants a Car, the book itself is available in Spanish. A number of these are. Chair for My Mother is also available in Spanish. So you can look for that as well, depending on your student population. With each of these books, or for each of these books, they have a variety of resources. So if you go to their website, you can look at the parent guides, and you can either get them as a PDF, or you can actually request print copies of the guide. Now, you'll see the note there, book not available through CFPB. So they're not going to send you a copy of the book, but they can send you copies of the parent guide to distribute to parents of your students. So if you don't mind, find for me your raise your hand option, if you can locate that, and let me know. I'm going to ask you to use or click that button if you are familiar with the book Those Shoes. So how many of you have seen the book Those Shoes before? Use that raise your hand button. It'll help me get an idea of how many of you are familiar with this one. This one's a newer book. They've targeted this resource as being for ages 5 to 8. So this is for the younger crowd, and it is quite honestly one of my favorites. I just love this book. I first came across it, or was first introduced to it, actually when I was volunteering in my daughter's first grade class. She's in 5th grade now, so it's been a number of years. but I'll just never forget hearing the teacher in the background reading this story and just thinking, wow, what an awesome story to be able to use. And she used it right at the beginning of the school year, and was really more of a um, sort of more of a character building story, but used it as a great read aloud. It's by Maribeth Boltz and illustrated by Noah Jones. And the grade level for this is indicated as really kind of around K-3. You could probably do it in a pre-K classroom. Depends if you're talking about. I think that 4-year-olds could stand or could handle some of the content. I wouldn't go younger than that. The story itself, and again, in terms of reading level, independent reading, it would be a higher level, but certainly could be read aloud in kindergarten or first grade. So this is a story about Jeremy, who wants a pair of shoes like the ones he knows that everybody at school seems to be wearing. By the way, I noticed that a number of you, I think, are also participating over in our dollars and cents book study, which I'll talk a little bit more about at the end of our webinar. But one of the things that we talked about, or one of the prompts, was to identify something that your students put a higher value on than you do. And one of the things that came up over and over again was how much kids are spending on sneakers nowadays. And it was funny because I don't actively teach in a classroom. I have 2 middle school age children and a husband who is a middle school principal. And I shared with them, I said, if there's teachers talking about kids spending $1,000 on a certain brand of shoes, and all 3 of them were like, "Oh yeah, it's whatchamajiggers," and I had no idea. I had no idea that students were spending $1,000 on sneakers. So when I say that this could be used in an older classroom, this is a perfect example of a book about elementary for about kids that are younger, but would do a great job of activating a conversation about the choices that we make about spending money and wants versus needs. So this really gets into the whole notion of wants versus needs. But Jeremy lives with his grandma, who says we just don't have money for everything that we want. And it's also, I think, a great empathy building story where we think about and put ourselves in the shoes of the character, and think about how they were feeling at this time. Just a great story. So anyhow, the resource here, the parent guide from CFPB, points to key ideas, and then it has a series of things that parents can talk about, which again, most of these could just as easily be used by teachers. We're going to ask about grandma says there is no room for want, there is only room for need. What do you think she means? Why does he want these specific shoes so badly? How do you think he's feeling? Grandma saved money for Jeremy's new boots. Have you ever saved money to buy something? How do you save money? And then something to do, create a needs and wants chart. Create a list of needs that your family has and a list of wants. So again, some of these could easily be translated to a classroom environment as well. And like I said, these guys are available as PDFs, or you can get them in print if you wish from CFPB. Last but not least, they also have another resource here that I just wanted to mention. This is another one for parents about things that they might want to look for and consider with their child or elementary school age student. So that wraps up the resources from CFPB. Let's move on to resource number 3, which is Econ EdLink. Econ EdLink comes from the Council for Economic Education out of New York, which I mentioned earlier is a large nonprofit organization focused on economic education. We used to have a Council on Economic Education, or what was called Economics PA here in Pennsylvania. That organization is no longer in operation, and there's a new organization that is sort of similar, but is no longer an affiliate of the Council on Economic Education. But this is the national equivalent, and sort of overarching, and they provide lots of great resources. If you've never been on Econ EdLink, they have resources for every grade level. So I'd encourage you to go there. To access the ones that we're going to talk about today, the best place to go is to go into collections. By the way, I should mention that you have the ability to sign in or sign up. So I would recommend that you consider getting a login ID for Econ EdLink. There's no charge for it, and it'll allow you to save things and access some of the sort of behind the scenes resources for educators as well. But these are easier. These are easy to get to without one, the ones that I'm going to show you right now. So if you go to collections, you'll see this economics and children's literature one with 15 resources. Now, I want to mention you'll see some overlap, and you'll see some lesson plans from some of these sources, in particular the first three sources that we're talking about, that in some cases may be very similar or may actually be the same lesson plan. There's a lot of cooperation in the world of financial literacy resources. The Council on Economic Education and the Economic Education arms of the Federal Reserve System work very cooperatively. And so you'll see that some of these resources and some of the lessons that are here on Econ EdLink actually came from some of the Federal Reserves. So I just wanted to mention that in case you start, sort of like, hey, I thought I've seen this before. You are correct. You're not imagining things. So one of the things I wanted to mention that they have on Econ EdLink, similar to the webinars that we do here with the Making Sense Project, they offer webinars as well on a regular and ongoing basis, and put theirs on their website just like we do. That educators can watch afterwards at their leisure. So these are old webinars, ones that were done in the past and are available on their website. They use Vimeo, whereas we put ours on YouTube. But anyhow, so a variety of different topics here that if you're interested in any of these topics, and even all the way down to the spotting economics and young adult literature that goes into more higher levels. That's that is the YA category, not the children's lit. But these are a great resource. Unfortunately, you can't get out 48 hours for them. But if you're interested in just spending some time looking at these on your own, I'd encourage that. So again, just like with the others, I wanted to share a book. This is one of my favorites. I love this book for a very, very long time. It's called Uncle Jed's Barbershop. For a while, it was out of print, and I wanted to cry. But really, all I have to do is read the book, and I get a little teary-eyed, quite frankly. But anyhow, this book is just lovely. It's by Marjorie King Mitchell, and the lesson is targeted at grades 3 to 5. I'd argue that you could even perhaps go up a little bit and or down depending on how you adjust the activity. But certainly the read aloud is just fantastic. I mentioned our book study earlier. Another topic that's been of great discussion is really looking at opportunity costs. And a lot of times, some students will be taught what opportunity cost is and others aren't. It is a part of the academic standards in economics here in Pennsylvania that students learn at a very early age what opportunity cost is and how to identify it. So for those of you who may not be familiar with the term opportunity cost, really what we're looking at is, when a student or an adult or anybody faces a decision and has choices to make, the opportunity cost is the next best alternative that isn't chosen. So you can look at opportunity cost in a variety of ways. So for example, it can be financial, or it could be, the opportunity cost of the use of your time. So say, for example, I have a choice of what I wanted to do this evening. I could participate in a webinar, or I could have, tried to catch up on Game of Thrones. So you chose to be here on the webinar, and the next best alternative, catching up on Game of Thrones, was your opportunity cost, right? It's the next best thing of your next best alternative. same thing goes. And one of the things I always try and encourage educators to do is realize that a cost is not always financial. It's the thing that you gave up though because you couldn't do both things. So when we look at finances, sometimes it's, okay, I'm going to buy this thing. I'm going to splurge on this vacation, and as a result of splurging on this vacation, I now cannot do, what am I giving up? And that opportunity cost can be immediate, or it could be in the future. There's been a resurgence of having students look at the opportunity cost even of higher education. So, when you choose to go to college, for example, one of your opportunity costs is the ability to start earning money right away. So anyhow, this story does a great job of helping educators introduce the concept of opportunity cost, as well as savings and setting savings goals and reaching those. So the story is about, I don't want to give too much away, but it's about Uncle Jed, who owns a barbershop, and his niece, and Uncle Jed is faced with an opportunity, or faced with a choice, and has an opportunity cost involved in making a decision. With this activity, the students, nice little hands-on game, you print out these cards and cut them up. If I were doing this in my classroom and plan to use this, in the future, I might laminate these cards and keep them around to use again. But you have a stack of these cards, and students roll the dice, and each time they roll the dice, that's for their amount, or a dollar amount, and then they have to decide, are they adding money or subtracting money from their balance. So they are going to try and figure out, so you collect change from around the house. Maybe that earned you $2 because you rolled a 2. Maybe then you bought a toy at the store, and that was for $1, so you're going to subtract that. So it's an addition and subtraction back and forth until students reach their savings goal, which is identified here as a new video game that costs $50. So to see what that's like. So that is the activity that I wanted to highlight from Econ EdLink, from the Council for Economic Education. All right, resource number 4. I'm going to encourage everyone just to take a quick stretch break before we dive in. I'm going to take a really quick drink. Thank you for waiting for me there. Okay, so as we dive in here to resource number 4, which is from the Federal Reserve Bank of St. Louis. So the Federal Reserve Bank of St. Louis offers resources for both educators and parents. As I mentioned before, you might see some things that look familiar if you spend time on the Philly Fed or the Econ EdLink websites. Again, you might see some crossover. One of the things I like about both of those previous sites is that I think their stuff focused on children's literature is a little easier to find. Econ Ed at the St. Louis Fed has so many resources that you really kind of have to do a fair amount of filtering to get to them in their search. So, or the ones that we're talking about today. Granted, you could very easily just do a search for a chair for my mother and it will come up. But if you're browsing and you're not sure what to look for, I would encourage you to do some filtering in their search capability here. So for example, the way that I did my search to help you and model this is to go to elementary school, and then for the subject, pick personal finance. For the resource type, to pick lesson. So this is to help sort of narrow it down. You can do any search, obviously, that you want. And again, you'll notice here that they have resources from elementary school all the way through adults. So depending on what audience you have or what you're interested in, you can search however you would like. The lesson here with a chair for my mother, You'll notice has not only the lesson plan in PDF form, but they also have 2 whiteboard, so a smart board and this other, sort of flip chart option, as well as a PDF of a Q&A that could be sent home with parents to reinforce what was done in the classroom, or just sent home for parents independently. Again, A Chair for My Mother is a great book. This one has been around. I pulled this graphic. This is the 25th of anniversary. So obviously this is not a brand new book. A Chair for My Mother and the books that have followed it. Something Special for Me. And the third one is just escaping me right now. If one of you knows the third in that series and wants to post it in the chat, feel free. But it is they're great books. They're beautiful illustrations. And this one, the lesson is targeted at grades 1 through 3. So if you're not familiar, I'm sure there's a couple of you on the line that maybe have not read this book, but the premise is that it's a family who's had a fire and they lost lots of their belongings. The mom works very hard as a waitress, and she comes home at night and she sits in a hardback chair, and they decide that they really want to save for a nice, comfy chair that they can, she can sit in after work and be comfortable, and they can snuggle up in. And so they set that as a savings goal, and they have a big jar, and every time she comes home, she puts a bunch of her change in the jar, and they're saving up for this purchase. So you'll see as part of the lesson, the students will identify their own savings goal. So there's the savings jar, and they write or draw a picture of what they might save for. And then they look at how they saved in the class, or sorry, in the story. And this one also has to do with sort of that human resources and human capital as well. And then look at strategies for reaching a savings goal. And so this activity over here on the right, these are sentences about a girl named Anita. She has a savings goal. Place the sentences in order to help her meet her goal. So you could either have students cut these out and put them in order, on their desk, tape them together, put them on a sheet, or if you don't want to go through that bother, you can just have them write, step 1, step 2, step 3, put them in the order that they think Anita should order them in order to reach her savings goal. So again, and there are I don't even want to hazard a guess as to how many lesson plans there are out there on A Chair for My Mother. Certainly one of those things that, if you find one of these books that you really like, some of you may be familiar with my phrase that I learned once upon a time in a professional development program where they talked about teaching by the case method, copy, and at the time it was referred to as copy and steal everything. Maybe not the most legal friendly phrase. I like to use copy and share everything. But anyhow, explore. There's lots of, once you find a book and you like it, and you might love this lesson plan, but maybe you want to look at other things. There are lots of other lesson plans out there on this on this book, and you can compare and contrast with those. So just wanted to mention that. Like Econ EdLink, the St. Louis Fed also offers webinars, and so they have what they call their Econ Lowdown webinar series. This is episode 6, focused on using children's literature to teach financial literacy. I believe the presenter on this one was Dr. Erin Yetter, who has her roots. Actually, she worked at the Philadelphia Fed for a while, and is a great economic and personal finance educator as well. This is some of the titles that are featured in this one are Clifford in the Big Storm, Alexander Who Used to Be Rich Last Sunday, and The Berenstein Bears Trouble with Money. So I specifically tried to pick books that weren't the same as ones from some of these other webinars. That way you could go and explore those and, sort of hear about lots of different types of resources. So that's one that you can make note of, maybe watch that at another point in time at your leisure, or maybe at some point over the summer when you're starting to think about next year. So it mentions that this is a Econ Lowdown webinar series. Econ Lowdown is a program of the St. Louis Fed, and it is really an amazing resource. You log in and register as an instructor, and when you do, you can create classrooms, add students, and assign online courses and videos, monitor student progress, and then upload student scores to your grade book, depending on what platform you use. And it is, really a fantastic tool. And they have now integrated with that students can sign in or log in with a Google account, which I know makes a big difference for schools that are using Google Classroom. So, and again, like the other resources that I talked about before, Econ Lowdown has resources for all age levels. So this really is kindergarten through college. So here are some resources on personal finance that are focused at K-2. And these are, in some cases, stories that students can read and or videos that students watch. And again, these can be assigned to students, or you can just use them, and put them up and project them in front of the classroom, depending on what your access to devices is in the class. The other one I wanted to share from you, these are for grades 3 to 5. I really think that you could, in some ways, expand this up to middle school or even beyond, because these are about fables. So these are these financial fables from the Fed. And the reason I think these could be extended in an ELA environment would be for older students to watch some of these and then maybe create their own. So when they're looking at the genre of fables in particular, and that as a writing style. But these are really cute. This is Shopping Wisely with Olivia Owl. So Olivia Owl and Penny Pigeon share valuable advice with Rhoda Roadrunner to improve her shopping habits in this fable. And this is centered on the moral: if you plan and compare before shopping, you will use your money more wisely. So in this one, the students, it's 3-minute story, so it's not long. It's read to them. The words are also on the screen. You can do this again in a classroom setting or one-on-one, depending on what device access you have. So just another great resource, and we could spend an entire hour just taking a deep dive into Econ Lowdown. We might do that on a future webinar, you never know, but I just wanted to make you aware of this and let you go down that bunny trail on your own. Okay. Resource number 5 comes to us from, so we're working our way west, literally. I didn't really plan this, but it just sort of happened. So we've gone to St. Louis, and now with resource 5, we were traveling a little bit further west out to the great state of Utah, Utah has one of the, or has some of the I would say the strongest requirements for financial literacy of students across the grade span. So, students there must take a course in personal finance in order to graduate, and they have this passport, student financial literacy passport, that has resources at every grade level for students to complete. So if you go to financeintheclassroom.org, you're going to find over here under the lessons and activities, grades K to 12, you will find resources at each grade level. So they go K through 10, and then 11th and 12th grade are lumped together. And there they really support the notion of a standalone, and it's a required standalone course in financial literacy in Utah. So when you dive into these, I wanted to go ahead and show you that there is, the teachers are to complete at least one lesson from each core content area: math, social studies, and language arts. They have flexibility. They can use the lessons below or use their own. So at each grade level, you'll find activities from each of these three areas. You'll notice that the storybooks aren't just at the language arts. You'll see over here, you might notice the Berenstain Bears Trouble with Money, which I think we mentioned one of the others, but that ties to a math lesson. So when we see that in a variety of different ways throughout this resource. So if you, these are just the language arts resources. I just wanted to feature these for a moment at each grade level so you can kind of get an idea. Again, some of these books may be ones that you've are familiar with. I dare say every elementary school teacher in the lower grades is probably familiar with Click Clack Moo. Some of these are a little bit older. Country Bear's Good Neighbor is an older book, but is great, a great one on borrowing. So again, lots of great resources, not just in ELA, but in math and social studies as well. In addition, they have an area of their website. Let me just go back here a moment. So on their website, if you go to this resources, books, videos, music, PowerPoints, and more, that is where you would locate their book list. And so that is, if you go there, you would get to this page where you can use the tabs at the top for the grade level. So pre-K has books that are organized by these topic areas, so budgeting, careers, coin recognition or values, economic reasoning, saving, spending, wants, and needs. Then if you go to K-2, you see these topics. It sort of continues to expand. Some of them, by the time you get to the older level, you're not looking at coin recognition anymore, right? You're getting into some deeper topics. So again, and this goes up to 10 through 12, and then also to teachers and parents. So this is a great resource for identifying books. And this list is not a list of lesson plans. These are just, book ideas, I guess. And then, you're on your own to locate a lesson plan or an activity. But it's a great list of financial or personal finance related books at various grade levels. The one that I wanted to call attention to today is One Hen, How One Small Loan Made a Big Difference. This is by Katie Smith Milway, and it is for grades 3 to 4. The lesson plan is this is about a concept that I think a lot of adults don't even know about, which is about microfinance. But it's a great story about how how one hen can help a village, and is a great read. By the way, for those of you who aren't familiar with some of these books, if you search for them, a lot of them are read aloud on YouTube. It's sort of the way that I cheat and explore books before I want to dive in and buy them. The last one I wanted to highlight is from Visa, Practical Money Skills for Life. This one is not a book-related one. They have lots of resources on their website, lesson plans and more. But this is, I want to focus on the games. So there are 3 games that I want to just walk you through very quickly here in the time that we have remaining. The first one is Peter Pig's Money Counter. This is great for younger kids that are looking at counting and saving money. I'm just going to share with you this real quick preview here. All right, so this one is available to be played online, or you can download the app. I think this would be a great addition for schools that are doing math centers. Lots of schools now, in addition to language arts or reading centers, have students having some time maybe on devices. If there's a couple in the classroom, this might be one that you want to consider. The Money Metropolis is one for older students that could also very easily be used in middle school in particular. I'd say at least up through sixth grade. Seventh, maybe might be pushing it a little bit, but you can create your own characters, so male, female, skin, hair, look, and then you identify your own savings goal, and you travel around this map, or your character travels around this map trying to earn money. So in this case, they're at the library, and if they have to sort these books and put them on the right shelf by by the letter of the alphabet. If they get too many wrong, they won't earn their money. They try and go earn money by delivering papers, but they find out they need a bike. Okay, we've got $50. Let's go to the general store, see if we can buy a bike. Oh no, it's $100. Can't buy the bike yet. Notice a rake costs 20 and a leaf blower is 40. Why is that? Well, if they go to a couple of people's houses on the map, they find out they can rake leaves or mow their lawns. If they want to rake the leaves, though, they're going to need to go get one of those $20 rakes or leaf blowers. But they can just use that person's mower and at least earn $10 for each time. However, if they run into stuff, then they're not going to be able to earn that money. I was kind of embarrassed the first time I did this. I think I ran out. I hit too many things and had them all up here, so I at least showed you my attempt where I did a little better. Anyhow, you use the arrows to move this around, and once you get the area or the lawn mowed, then you earn your $10 in the game. So here, for example, you can look at your budget and shows you what you've accumulated and how much money you have that you could spend. You can go to the clothing store or the arcade to spend money, what have you. So really cute little game, nice little interactive. The last one really doesn't have as much to do with personal finance or about sort of coins and currency, but this is just a little puzzle game where students put together a puzzle. I, of course, chose the $10 bill because I'm a big fan of Hamilton, the musical. Anyhow, so you put together that, you see Alexander Hamilton, click on the fun facts, and you find out he was born in the West Indies, first Secretary of Treasury, etc. So you can do this with different denominations. So that concludes our 6 and 60 children's books and games with a personal finance theme. Glad that you hung in there with me and saw us through to the end to share all of those great resources and those books.